starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I saw your headlines of approval.
It was a lot better.
This is crazy.
It was a lot pressed. It was a lot better. Although you still got the McDonald's thumbs up Calvin graduated joint, but it was good. It was
He ain't
good.
gave me an uploaded picture. But what's up, man? Let's not waste time. What's up? We got a lot of people in the building. I know who they're here to see.
Man.
Not here to see us.
Nope.
Unpopular Celebrities is back. Philly, over to you.
Yeah, just quick introduction as my co-host just alluded to. We are Unpopular Celebrities. I am yours truly, Philly DC, my co-host Pete to the other side of me, and also my other co-hosts, Jess Playa and Del Brown, who are out there in the world getting stuff done. And so we welcome you to Unpopular Celebrities this Sunday. You could be anywhere else, but you chose to be here with us. What better way to spend your Sunday, because we've got a treat for you. Our first guest for the Dos Cinco. What's up, Chad? Our first guest for the Dos Cinco. So you already know who we have on the show, but I'll give you just a little quick tidbit of who we have today. Not only was he a former pararescueman, chief master sergeant, best-selling author, board of directors for the Robert Irvine Foundation, highly decorated airman, and not only that, he was our former fourth senior enlisted advisor to the chairman. You know him, I know him. Let's welcome retired Ramón, Chief Master Sergeant, Senior Enlisted Advisor to the chairman, Ramón CZ Colón-López. Welcome to the show, everybody.
What's going on, sir?
Thanks, fellas. Good to be here.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much for blessing us and being on here, accepting the invite and coming in. We really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody who will watch this live and come back and watch it will get a different nugget that they can write down. So have your notebooks ready to jot down some good information. And either you're watching it live or coming back and watching the replay, make sure you jot down some notes and share them with people. But Philly, over to you first.
Yeah. So Ray, tell us what you've been up to.
So I retired back in November of 2023. And shortly after that, decided to just take a little bit of a break. And then I started doing some consulting work for a couple of firms. A lot of those firms were people that I had previous relationships with. One example is Atlantic Diving Supply, ADS which is a very large supplier, anything from socks to satellites for the Department of Defense. The CEO of that company was my swim buddy at Combat Dive School back in 1995. So when he found out that I was about to retire, he reached out and said, hey, I would like to bring you in as a strategic consultant to me as a CEO to make sure that I'm making the right business decisions and so on. So that was the first one. The second one, and he actually waited a few months until after I retired because he remembered when I said, I want to make sure that I spend some time with the family. Was Robert Irvine. And Robert called me and asked me to be in his board of directors for the Robert Irvine Foundation. And on top of that, one of my other mentors, Jim Roy, ended up, Chief Master of the Air Force Roy, ended up opening another door with First Command Financial Services to be in their board of advisors. So started doing that for the first year, and here we are. 1 year later, man, enjoying retirement.
Okay. Was it tough, the transition? I mean, with everything you did on active duty, and then just a lot of military members when they transition, especially senior leaders, I've always heard, and from different circles, it's hard to just leave that title behind you to some degree, and it's difficult, especially in your shoes. How did you make that transition and still able to contribute and give back to the military community?
So a couple of things on that one, right? Anything in life that you do not plan for is going to be hard. So that's where most people people get into a conundrum, right? They think they have an idea of what they want to do. They think they know where they want to live. And then they wait so long to make those decisions to where when H hour comes, they're struggling. They're like, God,
Mm.
I didn't make this decision. I wish I would have, I wish. And that's when people actually end up getting into the hard transition aspect of things, right? The other thing, specifically on senior leaders, one of the hardest thing for a senior leader transitioning is letting go. Man, it's no longer your show, right? Somebody else is coming after you, and they're going to go ahead and take the ball and run with it their own way. They're going to go ahead and develop their routes. They're going to go ahead and develop their priorities and so on. So hopefully you left a lasting legacy that is actually worthy of people's time still long after you're gone. So my transition was very easy, man. I had a highly capable senior enlisted leader coming after me in Troy Black, the former Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. And man, it was easy. So when I handed over the flag, I got in my car on 995 and came down to North Carolina. And that's it. Transition complete.
Right. Easy transition. Faith, good to have you on the show. If y'all have some question for Chief CZ, please put them in the chat. We'll see if we can get to them. I want to take you back to the beginning. I did a lot of research about you. One, when I found out that you were the first United States Air Force member to hold that position. So that really, of course, sparked my interest just because of the how much I have to play in the Air Force. But also, I found out that you were TMO before you went pararescue.
Yeah.
How does that happen? You don't see a lot of TMO go pararescue. Usually the opposite. They fell out and then they go TMO security services or something like that.
No, so this is what happened, right? So I came into the service just looking for an opportunity to get my independence, my autonomy, to get some discipline in my life. So I came in open general, man. I didn't care what I did when I first came in. So I went through basic training and they made me a TMO troop. So I did my first assignment, got into some trouble, and I thought that I was going to go ahead and part ways with the Air Force. But by chance, this PJ asked me if I ever thought about doing pararescue, and man, here we are. That was really a decisive moment in my life where I was struggling to find out what my purpose was, and the pararescue pipeline was it. Motivation to making it through that pipeline was the people that told me that I wasn't going to be able to make it. I was like, all right, I'll show you.
Well, did you talk to anybody, a supervisor, or anything like this is what I want to do, and have people tell you like, man, you're crazy. Like nobody's gonna be.
Yeah. So I had kind of like a 50-50 mix, right? There were people that basically they didn't have a clue because they never tried themselves, right? So including a first sergeant at the time, it was like, we're not worried about you, losing you in the books because you'll be back over here with your tail between your legs.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, all right, I got you. And so then, I had another direct supervisor, a Master Sergeant Steve Cathy, that was highly supportive, man. And he was an air transportation. He was a port dog type. And that was the guy that actually went running with me, that ended up going to the gym, doing a whole bunch of stuff. Didn't do the swimming stuff because he didn't like to swim. But, everything that was terrestrial, Steve Cathy was there, to help me train through that. So I had a mixed bag of people, those that supported and those that basically were giving advice without having an experience on the advice that they were given.
All right. Man, open general to go straight to TMO. I mean, were you worried about being a cop or a servant? Not worried.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I didn't care. I was looking forward to finally leaving home. I was finally looking forward to making my own way. So to me, the duty was irrelevant. Obviously, once you get into basic training, you're like, I wonder what I'm going to be doing. Okay, I see these guys doing that. I see them. And when they told me that I was going to be TMO, and then they told me that I was going to go to Greece, man, it was just like,
Oh, yeah.
we're good to go.
Yeah, I guess the
Yeah. But
location
no,
helps out.
I didn't have any worries about what kind of duty I was gonna get. My original plan was 4 years, see if I liked it and then make a life decision. And
Mm.
Wow.
yeah.
So curious, when you went into basic training, did you have things about you before you joined that you knew that you had to let go in order to be in the military? Were you hesitant to do that, or was it pretty easy to let that stuff go?
My hair.
What was your
I
hair
had
like?
I had to let go of my mullet.
Oh,
So
not the
and
mullet.
oh yeah, man. So the mullet was the first thing to go. And funny thing, because I still stay in touch with my TI, Tim Herrick. He goes by
Wow.
Hank. And so as a matter of fact, the last speech that I did as a SEAC was at BMT, and Tim Herrick was in the crowd. So it
Wow.
was it was super cool. So I
Wow.
remember, right, I was looking for independence, right? But I was also a very push the limits type person. So I remember right after we got our haircuts and we got our BDUs, we were still getting BDUs issued at that time. Um, I decided to wear a blue shirt instead of a brown shirt with the uniform because I thought I was like, well, blue goes with the Air Force. So, and man, I got my ass chewed out. And that was just a quick reminder that, hey, look, man, you're always thinking, you always think that there's probably a better way of doing things, but now's not the time to do that. All right.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're on receive mode, you do as you're told, and you learn. All right. Until
Mm.
you get to a place where you actually can grow to make decisions. Now it's not the time. But letting go of things, man, I was a wild ass before I came in the Air Force. So, yeah, I love partying, in college, and that's the reason I joined, man. I just needed some discipline, right? So I needed to let go of that old self in order to go ahead and become the new me, the new independent me. But
Mm.
lo and behold, when I got to Greece, the old me crept up. And that's
Oh.
the reason I got Article 15. I got demoted and I almost got kicked out of the Air Force. So I was, you know, I guess I was fortunate to have so much misfortune in my life to where it became a really hard lesson learned and that I never repeated that behavior ever again.
Okay, P, Imma see if you gonna jump in because this is a
I'm
pause
about
moment.
to. Yeah, 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 definitely was.
Ray, you said you got demoted. Tell us that story. I wanna hear this one.
Yeah, not much to the story, man. Partying, alcohol related incident, ended up getting demoted, lost my one stripe that I had. And it was a very embarrassing situation, right? There's a lot of people that thought that I had potential, and I feel like I let them down. But one of those people ended up crafting a plan for me to go ahead and overcome, the loss in pay, loss in rank, and all of these other things, and maybe salvage my Air Force career, right? Because I thought I was dead in the water. And lo and behold, man, I chose to listen to that person. And Vicky Orcutt is her name. She was a Master Sergeant female, wasn't even in my chain. But I chose to listen to her, to the advice that she gave me, and that was one of the best lessons that I learned in my life. When somebody cares enough to reach out to you and they do something to help you, how dare you do not listen, man?
Mhm.
Wow.
All they're wanting to do is just for you to be a better person. And
Mhm.
if you choose to ignore and go back to your old ways, so now I had two strikes again, man. College didn't work out because of the parting ways. Now parting ways almost got in the way of the Air Force. No, never again.
Mhm.
So yeah,
That's amazing that
that's what
they
happened there.
that's amazing they let you cross train into PJ with the motion and everything like that
It
going
it
on.
it gets better, brother. It gets
Okay.
better, right?
Okay.
So so obviously, I lost timing grade,
Correct.
and I was going to have a struggle actually, coming back. So I PCS shortly after the incident to Randolph. And ironically, without knowing anything, I was working at Pittsburgh Hall, Medal of Honor
Oh
recipient
yeah,
PJ.
yeah, yeah.
So I was working in TMO in there, and the first sergeant that I had at the time, super, super guy, squared away. His name is Charles Anderson. So Charles Anderson actually took me under his wing, and he's like, all right, man, so we're going to help you go through this. We need you to go ahead and do this. And everything that they gave me, and even the ideas, because I was always a thinking person, I was like, man, why don't we do things this way? So I started doing a lot of good stuff for the 12th Transportation Squadron. And Charles Anderson saw that potential. And he was the one that said, it's like, hey, I need you to put your package together so that we can put you on for senior airman below the zone. I'm like, bro, I got a 15. That's not what you do. So, what are you doing? And he's like, well, all I need you to do is do your part and be you. Let me do my first sergeant stuff. I was just like, okay. And the reason he wanted to do that was because of my career job reservation. See, I didn't meet the timeline criteria, so he wanted to salvage my Air Force career. So he did his first sergeant magic, and I went in front of the board. My record spoke for itself. I was asked about the Article 15, and I was open and honest about it. It's like, hey, it's a lesson learned. I took my licking, and now I'm just keeping on ticking. So, and lo and behold, I made below the zone. So I was able to go ahead and get my CJR, and that was right around the time that I met that PJ that actually asked me if I ever thought about being a pararescue man. And pararescue didn't even look at that. They were just like, all right, if you can pass this test, then we'll go ahead and let you in the door. And then if you endure the 2 years that come after that in the pipeline, then you're more than welcome, So I was just like, all right, cool.
Holy, like the motion to BTZ. That is wild. Wow.
That's kind of like the Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is mind blowing.
And that is why I chuckled a lot of times, specifically when you become, a leader or a supervisor. Well, it's one mistake Air Force. I thought that was the biggest crack of shit I ever heard.
I agree.
Because, I always saw credibility as money in the bank. The more money you have, the more you can cash out, when it's time to pay the man, right? So it was a balance of batting averages, right? Be on the positive side of things. And then when something bad happens, your credibility will help you overcome that. And that is really the formula for overcoming adversity. You got to have the credibility to be able to go ahead and continue to push forward. But most people lose sight of that, and they give up on themselves when something bad happens, or the perception that people are looking at them on that light for the rest of their life. That is not the case.
That is music to my ears, because I tell folks all the time, like, when you make a mistake, the most important thing is what you do after mistake. And then if you're if you're a hard worker, that will help you get over the unfortunate mistake you make. But if you hang your head low, and then you start thinking people are out to get you, it's going to get worse because the spotlight is on you then. So that's a great comment.
Don't mistake a mistake for a crime. There's a big difference in there, right? So people got to know the difference, of the gravity of the situation before they actually think it was like, well, you just robbed me of my chances. Like sometimes you write your own script there, brother or sister. So
absolutely, I don't know what's surprising, but you are a member of the Triple Nickel family. Along with me, you know what I mean? There's a proud community of Triple Nickel.
Club.
I guess you're in it.
So Ray, we got a question for the audience from I don't want to miss it. So from Kat Aguilar. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. So it said, first, thanks for doing this. From a special operations perspective, how do we encourage airmen to value their service and understand that their experiences and stories are important too? As a security forces officer, I saw so many airmen feel like failures because they didn't make it into the highly competitive FSOC world. Cosign. It showed in their job satisfaction and in retention.
Well, Kat, first of all, thank you for the question. And I would like to start that same average in the Air Force is phenomenal in society. All right. Only 1% of our public decides to serve, and they're already in the club, right? Now, choices, hard work, dedication, and perseverance end up paving the path for whatever you want to do. I see a lot of people feeling down on themselves sometimes, but they haven't even tried. They haven't even tried. And sometimes when they do decide to put their metal to the test, they don't give it their best and they come up short. And then it becomes a pity parade for the rest of their life. I always told people, regardless of whether they were an operator, support, to never measure their worth to the proximity to the fight. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be the best of anything in order to be successful at the team. And, using several missions, you know, during the global war on terror, a logistical failure would have been catastrophic for the operational side.
Mm.
So don't measure your worth by how close to the enemy you are. Measure your worth by how well you do the duty that you have been given and the opportunity and honor to be a security forces member. Because
Mm.
there's going to come a time to where that it may not happen often, but there's going to come a time to where you're going to be the decisive factor between success and failure. And how dare you come up short when that time comes, when the institution has given you the training, the opportunities, and the guidance to be successful. So, man, be proud of what you do, regardless of if you're wearing the uniform, that is proud enough. I mean, you're a very small segment of society. And here it's going to be critical, as we continue to move forward with the potential of strategic power competition, great power competition, whatever you want to call it. Man, every single human being is going to count in that equation. And duties are there for a reason because somebody's got to do that work. And just because I like it doesn't mean that you have to like it. So be proud of what you do and then just be dedicated. And if you don't like what you're doing, quit bitching and whining about it. Do what I did, cross train.
So two
So-
things.
Yeah.
Let me give you the bomb for that one. Second of all, I'm gonna bill you because I'm about to run through this freaking wall, and my wife is gonna bill you for knocking down this wall. Holy shit! What a great answer to a question. Impromptu. Holy shit! All right, go ahead.
But that is really what it's all about, right? It's all about, if you really want something, man, go full on it. And that was another lesson that I learned in this whole process of becoming a pyro-rescueman, because I knew that once I figured out that that was going to be my purpose for life, man, I knew that I wanted to do 30 years. I knew that I wanted to be a chief in the Air Force, and I wanted to be a pararescue chief. And I knew that that was going to be it for the rest of my life. That was my profession. I had other friends, unfortunately, that kept bouncing back and forth. Well, I don't think I want to be commissioned. I want to do this. I want to do that. And they just kept taking turns off that highway to success, right? I was freaking I-95, freaking going 90 miles an hour, going towards what I wanted. A lot of these people ended up taking all of this detours out, and then they're like, "Oh, you're so lucky because things just worked out." It's like, no, you kept taking U-turns and turns and delayed your arrival where you needed to be. I chose to go in that direction and be ascetic in my approach to make sure that I did everything in my power to be able to attain the things that I wanted to do. I never lived my life with a bucket list, because a bucket list is nothing more than an inventory of regrets. That's for people that really don't have a plan on what they want to do, or even worse, they don't have the courage to do those things that your heart and your mind are telling you to do in order to go ahead and feel fulfilled in life. So every time that happens, I chuckle a little bit, just like, all right, if it's really in that bucket, why don't you take it out of the bucket and just make it happen? Why don't you live right now before you get robbed of this precious thing called life? Man, just maximize it.
Wow.
Jeez.
Nuggets. Hey, so Ray, so that kind of goes to that word that people throw around at times called niner. Like I see that a lot. They'll say, "Oh, well, you're a niner if you're not a pilot or pararescueman, seer in that realm." So, what are your thoughts on that term, niner, that people like to throw around?
Something that I really love about being a command chief was getting immersed in the cultures of other AFSCs. Take ammo as an example, right? Very, very strong culture, and they're not necessarily in the operational side. They're on the side of putting death on the iron that is actually going to deal it to the enemy. So that alone, right there, their purpose is pretty clear, right? Certain defenders, right? You got your daggers, very strong culture in there. Even the 820th, there's a very strong culture down there. And then, of course, the maintainers, by far the hardest working people in the entire Air Force. Man, those guys and gals really, really job out. And I got to see it firsthand because I saw them working in Al-Udeid, in Okinawa, Japan, many other places, man. And specifically on a hostage rescue mission that we did out of Herbert Field to rescue Jessica Buchanan, the maintainers were by far the hardest working Air Force people on the ground. Why? Because they wanted those planes to fly. They didn't want to fail. So for somebody to call somebody else an honor just because you're not part of us, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, I think it's like, hey, I'm proud of what I do. I never went around saying, hey, you're nothing because you're not an operator. No, that's the wrong approach to life, man. You got to respect everybody's talents for what they're designed to do. And not everybody's designed to do what an operator does. 90% of the people that I came in through training failed for that reason. It's not for everybody. But you also wouldn't want to give me a wrench and let me anywhere near an aircraft, because that will be the most thing that you can probably see in your life. I can fix a broken body, but I cannot fix a car. Cut me off at fixing bicycles. That's it. But man, it takes a special person to do that. It takes the talent to do that. And plus, when it comes to that culture, the hard, long hours, the conditions that they're working, man, it brings a certain sense of pride, because when people embrace the suck together, that's when you become a stronger team. Stronger teams do not get forged in comfort. All right. So that's why certain AFSCs that are very comfortable, man, they're like, well, we're not like those people, blah, blah. That's because, man, things don't suck enough for you to be able to say, wow, we went through this together. We survived. Let's go ahead and take the next challenge. So, that's really what the term, actually talks about. It's just, okay, so you're not one of us. It's like, well, we're not one of you, but we have an important job to do too. So,
All right. Hey, Ray, quick question. I know as a SEAC, you got to see, of course, everybody, all the branches, a small dose, and I hate to put myself in there, but I will for the segment of this question. When I was a military working dog instructor, of course, that's for all the DoD branches. So I got to learn a lot about the Marines, Navy, and Army brothers and sisters and what they do and how they do things. What is something, or is there anything you wish the Air Force would adopt from the other branches, or the other branches would adopt from the Air Force?
So, first of all, what the other branches can adapt from the Air Force is the thinking entities that we create. Man, we got some wicked smart airmen out there that are really making a difference for the world right now, because that's the kind of people that we embrace, right? We like the big minds, we like people that are highly technical, and other services are jealous of you because of that. On the other side of the coin, I would like the loyalty and dedication of the Marine Corps to actually make its way through all of the services. And the reason I say that, pay close attention, right? Because, this is something that has to do with discipline and standards. And when everybody was making changes, well, let's cater to this segment of society, let's cater to this segment of society, the Marine Corps said, nope.
Yep.
Recruiting numbers for the Marine Corps pretty much stayed pretty damn steady, because young men and women knew what to expect. The other services, on the other hand, it became a democracy on like, well, I don't like that. Why don't we change this? And we made so many changes throughout the years that people were confused of what enforcing the standard was all about. Man, is that hair out of regs? I mean, what the hell's going on? Too many changes too soon. And we were advising people against so many changes. It's like, at the end of the day, standards are discipline. It's going to be what win wars. And then, of course, people pick certain things that they want to go ahead and nitpick about. Well, what about this? Like, well, it doesn't matter. The rules are the rules. And until the rules change, then you abide by them. You don't find shortcuts to be able to go ahead and get your way and say, I show you. So, but the Marine Corps has been steady on their approach to fighting wars since day one, and they're not willing to change for anyone. And that is one of their biggest strengths. You want to talk about legacy, you want to talk about commitment, man, look at the United States Marine Corps.
Mhm.
Man, a lot of people agree
I
with this
love
segment.
I think in a commercial, Ray, they say, "You don't join the Marines, you become one." I love that.
Mm,
Oh yeah, yeah. They got it.
Yeah.
They got it right, man.
mhm.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Philly.
So, it's going back to the standards piece, I'm sure you're very much well connected still within the Air Force and the military in general. There has been a wave of push to really focus and concentrate on standards, case in point, um, going back to bringing in formations, in the future to kinda, like, do almost like security forces do, like, you have a guard mount. You make face-to-face contact with folks, making sure you understand the standards to which you mentioned earlier. So I think, at least in my point of view, I've seen most young folks today in the military, they try to find ways to get around certain standards, or they figure or ask, "Well, what's the point of this?" Case in point, dress and appearance, beards, things of that nature. So what are your thoughts on the standards piece now? Like, it just seems like we're trying to get people to focus on enforcing standards when we should have been doing that from the beginning. Your thoughts?
So there's a couple of epic failures in there, right? And the epic failures come from the immediate supervisors not holding people accountable. So
Mhm,
I mentioned that when I first came into service, when I was in Greece, I used to shave down, or I used to shave up to get a cleaner shave. So that tore my face up. So I was on a shaving waiver for about 48 days, you know. But you can rest assured that at the 48th day, that medical waiver went away when I was making progress with my shaving. So
mhm.
there's a way that you can do this, right? The whole argument about gas masks, this and that, is that beards are popular, and I'm wearing one for a reason today. All right. And before the first troll comes on, no, I'm not wearing any goddamn skinny jeans. All right. So, um, there was a necessity. There was a necessity for standards since day one. And you actually made the comment about formations, right? So
Mhm,
back in the day, before commanders had several touch points with people, specifically on the battlefield, they had three touch points: morning, midday, and basically prior to bedding down for the evening. And they have formations so that way they can do their pass and review. That is not just a drill and ceremony. That was actually a purposeful event for commanders, first sergeants, and leaders to be able to go ahead and look at their formation. And if somebody didn't look like the rest, then that was the focus point, right? What is wrong with you? How come you're not abiding by the standards? Something else going on, So there was a reason for the standard, right? And that is the purpose of having them. Number one, it reminds you that you're different than the society that you serve. Number two, it reminds you that you have certain sacrifices that are necessary for you to become a disciplined and loyal entity of this organization. And number three is to remind you that you're not always going to get your own personal desires and comforts. You're going
Mm,
to have to go ahead and live by the rules of the military in order to be successful on the battlefield. Now, one will argue not all of us are going to go to the battlefield. Tell me that in about 10 years. Tell that to the people that ended up going green to blue, or blue to green, uh, doing convoys when they thought that they will never see a day outside the wire. The enemy always gets a vote. But at the end of the day, regardless of what you do, we need you to be loyal, we need you to be disciplined, and we need you to abide by the standards to be the visible example of the changes you want to implement or the changes that you want to see. So
mhm.
that is the reason I took the approach that I did. Now, I was a little bit callous about the whole skinny jeans and beards thing, but that was because, man, I have been dealing with that issue for over 2 years, and I actually brought it to the Joint Chiefs, face to face. The force is asking about beards, and the answer was like all or none. And when the Marine Corps said, "The hell we are," then that was it, game over. But then people keep poking the bear. All
Yep.
right. You
Mhm,
know, and you never poke a bear that's hungry. And I'm always hungry.
mhm.
So whoever asked the question got the answer that they deserved. So,
I re
but man, but it's not that we were not willing to look at the change. We brought it up
Mhm.
to the table, and the institutions say no for the reasons that I just said, because the standards are more important than a personal preference to have facial hair.
And so, Ray, I was gonna say, I remember I think it was at AFSA when you made that
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
comment, I think.
yeah.
I was there. I didn't take it as being callous. I think it was a time where I think there was a massive push by a lot of folks in the young folks in the Air Force to try to get that over the board because they was like going to ask them like, "Hey, this is our opportunity to kind of get it over the fence, whatever." And when you made that comment, I think just the way you put it, as far as like what standards mean, and it's not,
Yeah.
it's more to focus on it just beards and such. It's more than that, and I think that's what they missed when you said that comment. And I have to ask, when you say you're
Yeah.
not wearing skinny jeans, even with J's?
Nah.
Like, what if you had some crispy
Nah.
threes?
Crispy threes.
Yeah, man. The whole bit. So this is the other part of that, right? So people went as
Mhm.
far as calling me a hypocrite because they put
Yeah,
pictures out, me wearing the beard in combat and everything else. There was a necessity for that. All right.
yeah.
There was a
Mhm.
reason for me to wear that beard because I was short, I was brown, I was smelly, and I blended in, you know? So as soon as I got back, guess what I did? I shaved the damn thing. Why?
Mhm.
Because it was no longer needed. And plus, we had relaxed grooming standards because of the community that I was serving
Mhm.
in. But when all of that was done, man, I didn't have a problem just going ahead and cleaning back up and getting back into standards. So
Yeah.
it was never about personal preference or about, doing something, that will rock the boat when it comes to the standards of the institution. Man, it was just a necessity, a combat necessity. So whenever somebody can highlight to me a necessity for having beards, I will fully advocate for it.
Mhm. I
Awesome.
agree.
Hey, quick
Yeah.
question. So, in your mindset, when they picked you to be the SEAC, what went through your mind as far as when they asked you, "This is the position we want you to be in"? Was it like, "Why me"? Was it like, "Here we go, we're about to make all these changes"? And is there anything? I'll pause on the second question.
No, so I was at the United States Africa Command, and I think that that was one of the best assignments I've had. It was, you go from combat and mayhem to a place where everywhere you go, you are in help mode. You're helping people. You're giving people hope. You're helping militaries be more professional. And my relationships with my African partners are long lasting. We still stay in touch via WhatsApp. You know, we look
Mm,
at pictures of family and everything else. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't positional. It was because we cared about being better. So as I was wrapping up that assignment, John Wayne Troxel, who was the SEAC at the time, was about to
Mhm.
retire, and they put the call out for people to put the packages in for SEAC. Now, the eligibility pool for that is the combatant commands at the 4-star level and the service senior enlisted advisors. So you're talking about between 17 and 19 people, right? So it's a two-board process. So once the packages go in, the first board actually skinnies down that pool of eligibles to 5, maybe no more than 6 that are going to interview face to face with the chairman to be
mhm,
selected. So it's a two-phase process. In the middle of all of that, they're going through your records, they're scrubbing all of your decorations, your Article 15s, all of that other stuff that is actually, a matter of record. And if something is amiss, they start asking questions. Why? Because there's a lot of serious backlash.
Mhm.
If your record is not what it's supposed to be, and you're in the position, and then scrutiny comes upon that, man, it's catastrophic because
Wow.
then people lose faith in the system. So just
Mhm.
like Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and everything else, it's a very rigorous vetting process, down to every single EPR, every single decoration, the narrative on those decorations.
mm,
So when I was nominated for it, via General Townsend was the African commander at the time. I was just like, I was thinking about retiring. And as a matter of fact, Janet was already getting the house ready for retirement. So I had to go back and tell us like, hey, so I'm being put in for this position. You know what it is, and you know where it's at. And I know we love Germany. I know that we're really looking forward to getting to North Carolina. What are your thoughts? And she's like, well, yeah, I was getting ready to be ready for retirement, but that is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I don't want you to be sitting at home with regrets. So follow your heart. And So made it through the first round. Then the second round, when I interviewed with the chairman himself face to face, guess what the questioning was all about? It was still about the black and white, the record. Tell me about your combat experience. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And then we started talking about sports. And he's a Boston guy. I'm a New York guy. So I thought that was it. I was going to retire, you know. But lo and behold, you know, you get the call later on. It's like, hey, congratulations, you're going to be the fourth senior enlisted advisor to the chairman. And man, it was an honor. It was really an honor. It was a very surreal experience.
Okay, so kind of zinger question. As your position in the SEAC, was there any decision you made that said that was probably not a good decision after you made it?
I am not being egotistical when I say I didn't, but that is because of the way that I learned to make decisions through previous failures, right? So I knew that I needed to be calculated. I knew that I needed to be factual, and I knew that I needed to be inclusive of the stakeholders in any decision that was being made. So if it was something that affected the troops, I went to the troops to ask for their input. If it was something that was going to affect the services, I went to my peers, the service and enlisted advisors, to see what will be the left and right limits, you know, the pros and cons for the specific service. And if it was something that was going to affect the families, I contacted families to make sure that we were making the right decisions. So there wasn't a single time in any of those boardrooms that I didn't walk in with what I thought was going to be the best for the people. Now, did I win every argument? Absolutely not. Sometimes people go in a different direction, and then you just got to be there to fight another day. With a couple of decisions that were made in the time that I was a SEAC, a couple of my peers asked, man, why don't you just go ahead and get up and quit? Why don't you just go ahead and give it up? You know, it's bullshit. I was just like, well, here's the deal. I find myself often being the voice of reason, bringing the facts to the table, bringing your voice. If I were to quit, which by the way, you know, I've never been one to quit on anything. That will open the door for some yes man to come in and just, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and really screw over the force. And I'm not about to do that. And I told them point blank, I'd rather be fired than quit. And if I'm going to be fired, it's because I'm being very vocal about something. So, but that was my mindset, man.
Man, that's so awesome.
Pete, let me get to this question. So Ray, Scott Roy, shout out to Scott Roy, says his question is, leadership is trying to tighten down on standards and discipline, but with the flexibility that's being pushed in the past and standards, do you believe it's going to be harder to get back to what right looks like?
Well, it shouldn't be that hard, brother. You know, and but I mentioned that there were some epic failures at different levels of echelons, and a lot of that has to do with the immediate supervisors not enforcing the standards at the lowest level. So when all these changes came about, obviously, you know, I'll take one as an example, right? And I think I'll take one that was rational because there was some actual medical implications, and this is ponytails for females, right? Man, those haircuts, I was just like, man, that shit has got to hurt. You know, the hair all pulled back and everything else, and then the bun and all of this other stuff. I was just like, yeah, does it look professional? Yes. But man, I'm pretty sure that there's other ways that our females can look professional. So ponytails came about, and the decision was not popular across the services. As a matter of fact, the Marine Corps still doesn't do it, and they will never do it. But what happens when you approve ponytails? The next question comes about, we want longer ponytails. And then it becomes a matter of personal preference and not the intent of why the standard was relaxed. Now, every single one of us has to give up something in order to wear the uniform. That's what uniform means, right? Uniformity means one. Everybody looks the same. And not everybody looks the same because we look at across the screen over here, every single one of us looks different, right? But if we wear the uniform and we're clean shaven, we got our haircuts and everything else, good to go. You know, you are part of the club, right? And you are abiding by a standard that is sacred for a reason. And that is because when the bullets start flying, when the rockets start coming inside the wire, man, we need people to be able to quick think, to be able to be disciplined, to be able to sacrifice, which is one of the most important promises that you make by taking the oath. It's got to be unquestionable.
Right.
But the second you start delving into, well, I want to do this because I want to look different, then I have to question your loyalty to what you're here to do, because then it becomes about you and not about your duty.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's where, to that question too that Scott asked, I think that's where it seems like where we're at, where you have folks that join the Air Force and they expect the Air Force to kind of shift for them to be able to still maintain who they are before they put on the uniform. And I would argue that's not the intent. The intent is there's certain things you have to meet in order to join this institution. And you're going to lose some of those things that you used to. Like when I came in, I couldn't have a high top fade anymore. I had to get rid of my Big Daddy Kane haircut. It hurt. But that's why I had to do in order to get out of basic training when they shaved my head. There was another question that said from Olivia
But
Rain.
then, no, let me go ahead and finish answer Scott's question, right?
Okay.
So is it going to be hard? Yeah, man. Every time you relax something and you go ahead and try to tighten up on the standard, it's naturally going to be hard. Take us in the tier 1 community as an example. We got used of walking around with beards for a decade. And then Admiral McCraven comes into the command. He sees how the force is getting sloppy, and he goes back to the basics. No shit. He says, we're going to go back to wearing uniforms. We're going to go back to making sure that you shave your faces, blah, blah. That was like taking their firstborn when that happened. It was very unpopular across SEAC, across Delta, across the 24 Special Tactics. But he made the decision because he wanted to look out for the force. He wanted us to be back to the level of quiet professionalism that was required to be the national mission force. All right. Was it hard? Absolutely. Especially being a chief at the time at that unit, telling the guys to clean up and everything else. Man, it was very challenging, but you have to hold the line. Leadership is not easy. Leadership is not easy. And a lot of it has to do with making people do unpopular things, or something that goes against, and I say popular not because they're, cherished things, just because that's what the majority is thinking. Right. So you have to be able to go ahead and make those decisions and be able to explain the why you're doing it. And that's where most leaders fail. Just because I say so, it's not going to cut it in today's society, because our youth right now is very inquisitive. Why? Because they have an abundance of information in their hands. So you have to at least have the background and the facts to be able to explain it to them on why you're doing the things that you're doing. And if you can, you're going to fail. All right. And it's going to make it even harder. But it starts with you setting the example, again, the change that you want to see. This is why I do the things. That's why I never got fat. That's why I never freaking took a waiver for a PT test. That's why I never did a lot of things. And when I did have a waiver, it's because I had surgery and I couldn't do the things. And man, I was chomping at the bit to get back on the horse so I could go ahead and do what I needed to do to show people, hey, look, this is why this standard is important. But if each and every one of us does their part on highlighting the importance of the standard, it could be a lot easier. But we have a bunch of lazy people out there that just don't want to do it.
Shit.
Sorry,
Ray,
Kelly.
I was going to ask this question from Olivia. It's kind of related to that.
Yeah.
Ray, do you believe we give supervisors too much to interpret when it comes to like standards or regulations?
Olivia is absolutely right. And that was, my comment about too many changes too soon. All right. So they left the door wide open to where a young supervisor fresh out of ALS will struggle to know what the black and white said. And that is something that Dave Floss is actually working right now. Make sure that standards are, in the words of General Fogelman, universally known, consistently applied, and non-selectively enforced.
Holy shit.
All right. That is really the recipe for success when it comes to empowering people to hold others accountable when they fall short of the standard. But the regulations became so nebulous that people were confused. And I cannot fault those people that were shy about, specifically things that were racially specific, right? A white person will not be comfortable telling a black person about their hair because, that's an IG complaint. I cannot ask. I cannot ask about beards. I cannot ask about this. No, bullshit. We have no color other than the uniform that we wear. The standard is the standard for a reason. So if something doesn't look right, a supervisor must question. That is what you do. It's called validating, and it's called accounting for. Not berating, not belittling, not being discriminatory.
Right. A lot of what you're saying is true, and a lot of the things I think sometimes struggle with is the airman who's receiving is not ready to receive the feedback, and they're so quick to go to the regulation and be like, find that one sentence that will be the get out of jail free card to be like, you know what, it says I can do it because it says it right here, and instead of just, you know, what happened to the yes sir, yes ma'am, get it fixed, then go back and look it up. I don't know where that went left.
You know that barrack lawyers have been around for as long as great white sharks have been, man. They've always been there, right?
Yeah.
But here's the deal, man. So there have been several instances, and I'll give you this one example as I was getting ready to retire. That I was going through the gate in one of the bases in San Antonio, Texas. You know, I like to respect people's privacy and the nature of the situation. But I had this A1C black kid, skinny again, looked like Pookie from freaking New Jack City. And you know, this kid had a no shit afro that was about 6 inches high.
Right.
His beret was looking like Rerun's hat on. I was like, man, something ain't right. So I went ahead and asked him point blank, you know, I was a civilian close, you know, and I asked him, it's like, hey, you have a waiver for the hair? He's like, it's all good. It's within regs. I was just like,
shit.
I don't think that's the bulk that we normally do that. Are you sure your hair is within regs? And without missing a bit, the kid goes like, oh, you just saying that because I'm black. And I'm like, I'm about to have a couple of expletives over here. I'll say, oh, the fuck you did it. In case you didn't notice, I am brown.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not about race. This is about you being out of uniform. So who looked at you at guard mount this morning? And then the conversation just spiraled down. But he was quick to pull the race card without even thinking twice about it. That is concerning to me. Because he knows damn well that he's outside regulations. He knows that somebody ignored it that morning, which basically empower him to be able to look at me and tell me that. And then when he finally got my ID card, he didn't show any remorse. He didn't care what a SEAC was. That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. You look past the problem, it's going to magnify itself.
Wow. That's even related, like you were saying, right? Like these agencies that folks, do I dare say, weaponize when they don't get what they want when it comes to the standards, like the IG or the EO. There are supervisors that feel hesitant to enforce the standard because, to your point, they're afraid of doing it because they may be sent to, like, have an IG or EO complaint. Or it's just like Pete would say, you know, back in the day, they said, hey, your boots are not in reg. That's not my time to argue. I went back, squared it away. Then later on, I would find it, talk to my supervisor, we would hash it out. But that's not the time to go back and forth with him. So yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Well, so I'll bring you back to my time in Okinawa. That's probably the place where I got the most IG complaints. And what was happening at that time? The shift to EPRs, the accountability, you know, the no longer giving firewall 5s just because she showed up. And that was the same time, we're talking 2012, where a lot of people, a lot of young airmen were getting kicked out of the Air Force for failure on PT tests. Now, we had about 22 chiefs in there, and about a third of them were basically what I like to call marshmallows wrapped in dental floss in uniform. And when I actually started looking into the records, some of them hadn't taken a PT test in 10, 15 years.
Right.
And I'm like, what message is that sending the young troops that are getting kicked out right now? So I started calling a spade. And if you were fat, I call you fat. And that went immediately to the IG, right? A lot of complaints, but it was all accountability. I was just like, hey, you're obese. Well, you're discriminating against. No, I'm not. I'm calling you what I see it. You're fucking fat. All right. And if you really care about the standard, then you better get in shape. You better do something about it. And you better be the example for those people. Because right now, we had a lot of people with high hopes of making a living in the United States Air Force to serve their country. And they're getting kicked out because somebody's overlooking or basically not necessarily forcing them, but holding them accountable to make sure that they're doing their PT, to make sure that they're not cramming for the test and fail when the test comes, which is not a hard test, which is even more mind-boggling. But man, that was what was going on. You know, the do as I say, don't do as I do was well and alive in there. I was just like, if you're that kind of leader, you're not going to be part of this formation. I'm sorry. I'll find a way to go ahead and get you the hell out. Put in your papers, retire, but not on this watch. You know, and it was both on the officer and enlisted side. So,
I got a good question, and I want to, so I want to ask this. And I want to ask my own. So, do you think taking away testing and promotion quickly took away from learning the actual Air Force? And I'll say there's a lot of things when I was testing that I know about now that I don't know why I know. Like Operation Linebacker 2, you know, thinking about cutting, you know, the first Silver Star, all the Medal of Honor winners, what side the American flag has to be on when you're, you know, protocol stuff. There's a lot of stuff I know that is because of the testing. And at the time, I don't know why the hell I was learning it other than just to hope that it's one of the answers on the test. But do you think that the Air Force went wrong with taking that away?
Yes. And this is the reason why, right? I spoke about the things that remind you that you're different than the society that you serve. That particular knowledge in there, whether you care about what size flag goes on a boat or not, it reminded you that there's a reason you're learning that. Because there are certain protocols, you are basically the guardians of the Constitution. You're the guardians of the American way of life. But these are the same people that cannot recite the oath of enlistment if we were to ask them right now. What was that promise that you made before you started collecting a paycheck from the Department of Defense? You know, you said, I state your name to solemnly swear that you support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestics, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed over me in accordance with regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. That promise right there tells you everything that you need to know about who you just became. And all of these other reminders, you know, the history alone, Linebacker 2 as an example. Look at that time in our nation's history. Look what was going on government-wise and, you know, military, you know, conflict-wise. And it was a very contentious time. What did we get to see here in recent years? Another very contentious time to where government was making decisions and the department didn't really actually mesh with it. Take the Afghanistan withdrawal as an example, right? The evacuation, you know, you can put it into contracts, evacuation of Hanoi versus evacuation from Afghanistan. Things like that actually remind people, it's like, hey, number one, this is not new. We have been here before. But most importantly, if I dig into the past, I can get the lessons learned from that particular situation and try to apply them to what's going on today. And better yet, I can be better armed intellectually to deal with anything that gets thrown my way, because chances are it has happened before. And there's somebody, some human, flesh and bone, that dealt with the situation. Are they alive? Can we go ahead and dig into their history? Do they have any kind of writings out there that talk about their experiences? That's what I concentrated my life on. I didn't get my bachelor's degree until I was at the 4-star level, but I was reading a whole bunch of other shit because I wanted to know that history, what made us the fighting force that we are, and what is that is required of us to be able to make sure that set the next generation up for success. That education to me was far more important than some diploma on a wall. And when it came down to it, man, I finished my education. But it wasn't a requirement for me to have a bachelor's degree like a lot of the professional students that we have in service that spend the majority of their time going to school and they don't do a damn thing at work. You know, there's got to be a balance somewhere in there. And education does make you better. And I was very ignorant for a long, long time about the value of that 4-year degree. When I did it, I was just like, okay, I get it. But I wouldn't trade a single second of the knowledge that I got from the School of Hard Knocks and the School of Military History to be able to go ahead and become a better warfighter.
Wow. Awesome. Philly, one more question. I'll let you go. So I'm gonna take you to your when you changed the office of the SEAC and you were giving it to SEAC Black, who's there now. And during your speech, I don't know if you remember this, you had a Marine in the back that passed out for holding the flag, and I've never seen this before. Especially not the MC, the person giving the speech, stopped your whole speech and took off and V-lined right after him to help him out. One, I want to know what was going through your mind when it happened. And then I think I guess I'll just stop there. What went through your mind when that happened, if you remember that event?
Man, it all boils down to who you are, who you are to the core of you as a human, right? That is who I am. I never pretended to be something that I'm not. I never said things that I never meant. And when something bad happens, my instinct is to run towards it, not away from it.
Mm-hmm.
That day was no different. I heard the thump. It didn't sound good. Help. That's my instinct. So that's the reason that happened.
That is so wild. I sent it to our people on the Unpopular Celebrity page, our 4 hosts that we have. I said, I just never have seen somebody, especially in the middle of their own speech, when you're concentrating on what you have to say, to, like you said, hear thump, stop everything. It's like people, even though everybody was there to see you, you stopped and you helped somebody else and then went right back to your speech, which I thought was amazing. So a big applause for you. I don't know how many people have seen that, but a big applause to you for doing that. I know you say that's just you, but when you is something different than the average person, it's amazing. So I appreciate it.
When you take your duty seriously, I mean, it's hard to take that away from you. And even nowadays, so we were on a flight coming back from Brisbane, and there was a medical emergency on the plane. It's a very long flight, and who were the first 2 people to run towards the situation? 2 former PJs. It's just in our DNA, man.
That's awesome.
And so I would argue, saying that, Ray, I would argue that's what we're trying to do with everyone across the force, is to get that mentality, not so much to just run towards the danger or to jump into action, but to have this mentality of just getting involved in the fight, regardless of which AFSC you in or which job that you do. So then my question would be, is somebody asked this question in the chat. We hear this term about multi-capable airmen, now mission-ready airmen. And in the end, like, a lot of airmen are saying, like, well, that's more of the Air Force telling me to do more with less money. Or, I'm not an engineer. Why do I need to worry about fixing an airfield, when we're in war? I'm a contractor. I would never go forward in a war. And so how do we get the airmen who are not in your community to have that same mentality?
Well, we mentioned what we value the most about the Air Force, and that is the technical mindset, right? We're going to need technicians. The problem is when you start making people trying to do too much outside of what we train them to do, those skills get diluted. And the value of the human, in turn, gets diluted. If I need an aircraft fixed, I want the best maintainer possible. If I need a freaking entry point secured, I want the best security forces that can be out there. If I want to make sure that I have the right fuel for the body to go and kick somebody's ass, I want the best services troop in there, making sure that they're taking care of that. So that is really the biggest value that we have as a service. It's the fact that we spend so much time and money in training people to be the best at their trade, that if we start diluting those traits by making them multi-capable or anything else, that could be dangerous, because then people are going to tend to gravitate towards the things that they like to do and not what they're designed to do. It's almost like almost every airman out there saying "hua" after they came back from their first deployment with the Army. They like that. They like that because they actually could say, "Man, I was outside the war."
Yep.
They never said that before. That's the danger of giving people something that they're not really designed to do. And even if it gives you the slightest amount of thrill and pride, man, that can become you. And you still go to many places to where people are saying "hua." They don't even know what "hua" stands for.
Right.
Heard, understood, and acknowledged. Army. Yeah. So, I mean, but that's I have some concerns with this approach, but I will also tell you one thing though. In my experience, when 9/11 happened and we invaded Afghanistan, we didn't know what the hell a counterinsurgency was. All right. We never done that before. We didn't know that certain people needed to be on horseback. We didn't know that the enemy was not going to be playing by the Geneva Convention rules. And we had to flex really quick. Did we fail? No. We ended up getting in there. I was like, all right, we're going to figure this out. And then it became the norm. That's what the American warfighter does. They make chicken soup out of chicken shit. And they make it taste damn good. So what we need to make sure is that every single young man and woman in our formations right now is empowered to be the best that they can be at the trade that they have, and given an opportunity to cross-train if they do not like that trade and if they want to continue to serve. But we also got to be stern on the accountability of their actions and the way that they carry themselves as an uniform wearing member of the Department of Defense.
Wow. We're getting close to our time. Philly, real quick, or excuse me, Ray, real quick. I have a couple questions, kind of rapid fire questions, kind of get to know you. Then I'll let Philly go, and then if you want to close us out.
Hey, Pete, before we get to, let's talk about his book.
I'm sorry. So, best-selling author, right? I do have the book here, right? So I went ahead and got my copy of the book. What was the inspiration behind the book? And another question: why basketball?
So, Scarlett just so happens to be my co-author's daughter's name. Newborn baby, Mike Sorelli's daughter, Scarlett. But Mike is another tier 1 Navy SEAL. And we were talking about American values and setting up our youth for success, not to be entitled, but to be courageous, to earn their keep, not to be expecting a handout, but to be able to have the ethic to work hard to attain whatever they want to attain in life. And most importantly, in today's environment with a lot of single parents that have full-time work and everything else, how can we, based on our experiences, facilitate conversations between the parent and the child that are meaningful and tough, but compassionate? So that's the reason we ended up writing that book. Now, that is only the first book in a 5-book series. And each book is going to be based on somebody's life. The second book is going to be based on my upbringing, growing up there poor in Puerto Rico, ascending all the way up to the rank of SEAC. There's a lot of dreams, a lot of hopes, a lot of different things. But the most important thing was the courage to go ahead and act, to be able to go ahead and take control of things. You know, mentioned that book is going to be coming out here probably next summer or this summer. And then, of course, on top of that one, we have the Carnivore Leadership book, which is basically a beefed up version of the 20 Silver Bullets. So the 20 Silver Bullet paper, it's been making its rounds around the Air Force. And I was advised by a publisher to go ahead and take each silver bullet, and instead of having the 5-second soundbite that is attached to it right now, to make it an entire chapter based on a lesson learned. And that is what we did. So right now the book is with the editor. It's going to be released April, May timeframe. And they're loving it. They're really loving the book. And the actual name of the book is Carnivore Leadership, Taking Charge Instead of Taking Shit.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting that one as well.
That's a stark contrast from the children's book.
Yeah. It's not a spinoff from the 5 series of the children's book. It's its own separate.
I love that, man, because I think a lot of young folks really like that style of leadership. They want somebody to be straight, tell it to them straight, and get their shit together instead of sugarcoating. I think they love it.
No, but I mean, but it's a necessity. I mean, if it was Mark Twain that said, if you want a young woman to covet anything in life, make it hard to attain. All right. Easy things do not bring self-satisfaction. It's momentary. It's almost like drinking a beer. You get satisfaction at the moment, and then you're regretting it for the rest, day or so, depending how much you drink, right? So people got to realize that, the best things in life are the things that are hardest to attain, the things that are harder to get through, and the things that actually make you work the hardest so that you feel fulfilled by the time you complete the task. And at the end of the day, whether you're victorious or you fail at it, you know that you gave it your best. That's what courage is all about. It's the ability to be able to go ahead and put your metal to the test. Don't be shy because you don't want to look back. If I fail, it's going to go ahead and diminish my credibility. No, to the contrary, the more you fail, the more you learn, and the more you do, the better off you're going to be as a leader because now you have experience. All right. Now, I'm not telling the younger people in this particular group to start screwing up, and say, well, I was getting experience. No, that's not going to fly with the first sergeant. All right. But what I'm saying is, like, man, get out of your comfort zone. And like I said, nothing comfortable, actually creates good experiences in life. So just, man, give it a shot and validate whether you can or cannot do something. But don't sit around thinking that, oh, I will never be able to do that, man. Validate it. Then you see what happens to you as a human.
Right. Oh man, you're saying a lot of good things. I don't want to go too long, but I want to get to these questions.
We're good, man. So
so let me ask you this. You keep mentioning the first sergeant a lot. Not every branch has first sergeants. So how important is the Air Force having these roles as a first sergeant? Or do you think if first line supervisor would just do their job, we wouldn't need first sergeants?
No, you're always going to need a first sergeant, and I'll tell you why. Ever since I became a command chief at the First Special Operations Wing, that was the important triad of leadership. It was the commander, the command chief, and the first sergeant. And the reason you do that is because the average supervisor, like I mentioned, they have a very tough task to do, whether they're a maintainer, a cop, you name it. They have their own development that they have to take care of. You need that senior NCO that is well knowledgeable on the left and right limits of the law to be able to properly advise people. And because 80% of the force is enlisted, the first sergeant is even more critical because you have a lot of people to account for. The first sergeant is also an impartial source for any leader in the organization to be able to make the right decision. They're advisors. So, man, a first sergeant is worth that diamond. They're freaking 20-carat diamonds, in my opinion. There have been some bad ones, but we tend to get rid of them pretty quick. But man, a first sergeant, invaluable.
I appreciate that.
And so you want to get the Matt Morris question?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. So Matt asked, maybe two parts might have been asked before. Ray, if you were to serve again, what would you do differently? And if you were still in the seat, is there any initiative you would like to get across the line or an initiative you would immediately stop?
So I always get asked this question about, doing things differently. And the reason when I left and I gave the flag to Troy Black and I got on my car on I-95 and never looked back is because, man, I was satisfied. I was satisfied with every lesson, negative or positive. There's nothing that I would change because I personally think that it made me a better human being along the way, specifically the bad situations. There were certain interactions with certain people at some point that I would like to have a follow-on conversation, not necessarily change, because, I'm not somebody that goes after someone. For every action, there's a reaction. And sometimes people got that side of me that is not very desirable. All right. But I would love to have follow-on conversations with some of those people just to go ahead and further analyze now that the emotions have probably died down. One of those was with one of my closest friends that we ended up having a falling out. And here recently, we just reconnected and we started talking about it, man. And it was, man, I'm sorry too. And that makes you feel good in the heart, right? But anything that I will change, absolutely not. Now, if I were still in the seat, was there something that I would like to change? No. I think every single assignment. So I'll go ahead and put it into this context, right? I mentioned that I provided a lot of advice in the 4 years that I was a SEAC. Sometimes you ended up being on the positive outcome of things. Sometimes people went a totally different direction. You're not going to be able to control it because I realize, and this is part of being a humble leader, that you do not have the power to make the ultimate decision. You have the power to advise. You have the power and the honor to be a representative of the total force, but you're not going to have the final call. At the end of the day, there's going to be somebody in G series orders of somebody that has the power to make those decisions, right? So I advise to the best of my abilities. When I disagree with the outcome, I was also very candid to let him know that if I am asked about this, I will voice what I advise about, because it was the voice of the people, not my agenda, but what the people said they wanted, or what the people say, most importantly, they needed. So by the time I left the position, I was always very cognizant that my time in any position, whether it was command chief, whether it was a squadron superintendent, that it was going to be limited. So I always picked 3 things that I wanted to make sure that I got across the goal line. And that was in concert with the commanding officer. And I made sure that I got those things done. And at the end of the day, if I had further capacity, I left a list on a very detailed handover book. And it wasn't some bullshit book with rosters and bios and stuff like that. It was like, no shit, this is the work that we need to get done. I left it with my successor to see if there was going to be something that was going to fall within their priorities. Never left it to chance. And anybody that took over for me as a command chief knows that, because those books are still out there. And that is really when you don't ask many questions about what will you change. And that is because, deep in your heart, that you did the best with the time you had, with the empowerment that you had, with the situations that you were facing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times folks struggle with that. They think, well, if I went back, I would have changed this. But to your point, like, you did the best of what you had with the information you had, to make those decisions. I think that's important.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, who, go ahead.
No. And people are going to dissect everything to a very granular level nowadays because of the abundance of information or misinformation that is out there. But the best advice that I can give everybody that is listening, if you are at odds with understanding a decision that someone made, there's no better source than talking to the person themselves and ask them, how did you get to that decision?
Right.
Let me ask you. I like asking a lot of people this question. And I'll preface it by saying, who is your hero and military hero? So we hear about Pittsburgher, we hear about Levanto, and they have done some great things for the Air Force. But every person has that personal hero that has helped them out, whether it's saving their life, or just help them out where they were at a struggle in their time in their career. So I want to ask you, who is your hero that we will never hear about, but is very personal to you?
Can I have 2?
Oh, absolutely. Your show. I ain't gonna tell you no.
Right. Well, without question, Chief Master Sergeant retired Wayne Fisk. PJ, Sante Raider, USS Maya West, 2-time Silver Star recipient. When I was a young pararescueman, he was the one that taught me, number 1, to be a gentleman, number 2, to be the best operator that I could be. And that man was the closest thing to a positive father figure that I can say I had in my life. The second, fortunately, is no longer with us, is Chief Master of the Air Force number 5, Bob Gaylor. Bob was the contrast to the operational mindset. Bob was the person that gave me all the intellectual property when it came to the changes that the Air Force endured towards the years in his experience and how it relates to what we're doing right now. So I was very fortunate to have those 2 gentlemen by my side throughout my entire career.
Oh, man, that's great. Has there been any supervisor that you look at and, when he made a decision or was really, really tough on you, be like, this mother effer, I can't stand this dude. And 2 years later, probably gone back and be like, I really wish I can give him a hug for helping me out through these tough times. Have you had any supervisors that fill that role?
No. If I call somebody a motherfucker, I mean, they're a motherfucker for life. I mean, so people that get to that level, because I like to think and believe that I'm a very compassionate person. I love what I do. I love the people that I'm serving with until you give me a reason not to. So if it got to that level to where I actually call them an expletive, then they're done. you
I
know.
love it. I
But
love it.
there are other opportunities to where, obviously, the higher ranking you get, the more overtasked you become. And there's certain situations to where I didn't find out until after the fact that I could have done more for somebody else.
Mm.
And, those are the things that I actually wish that I could go back and help a little bit more. But you win some and you lose some, man.
Yeah. Amen. Definitely.
Yeah. So, Ray, curious, with all this talk about great power competition and
Mhm.
our near peer competitors, is there anything, any nuggets you can give us? One from us as being leaders, senior leaders, and supervisors to helping get our airmen ready for what may come if the flag goes up. Like, what are we missing, and what do we need to
Yeah.
do to better prepare?
So Philly is not what may come, it's what will come.
Mm,
Because we're at the cusp of probably like the toughest situation that we could have as a nation when it comes to war fighting. Near peer competition, it is exactly that. I mean, similar assets, similar will to go ahead and get things done, and similar, agendas. What I will say about us as the warfighters of the nation is that any military can have the most advanced, the most exquisite technology, rivet and steel, to be able to compare with us. What they do not have is, number one, the warfighting experience that the American warfighter has. We
Mm.
have done this over and over again. And we're the New York Yankees in a pennant race. All right. We got 27 wins. Everybody else, the closest is probably about 6 or 7, right? So that is really who we are. The second thing is, it doesn't matter how much new shit the adversary has. If you don't have the experience, it's that brand new car without an experienced driver behind the wheel. Now,
Mm.
they can train all they want, but at the end of the day, training can only get you to a certain point. It's the decision you make in the heat of battle that is going to make you victorious or a failure. And we have that experience. A lot of them don't. And at the end of the day, we have such a reputation that brings the support, global support from a lot of allies that some of those enemies do not have. And that matters. That matters when people start losing things, when things get destroyed, when actually mayhem is ensuing, people tend to look for a ray of hope. Who is the light in this darkness? And the United States of America, more often than not, has been that light. And
Mm.
that is really who they are. It's because of every single individual that is willing to serve today that we're going to win tomorrow's fights.
mm. So, Ray, I was wondering, do you want to respond to Sky Roy? He said, not the Yankees reference. We're
Oh,
glad
he's a Yankees fan.
about
He's a
that.
Yankees fan.
Oh, he's a Yankees
Yeah,
fan.
he's a Yankees fan.
I would
Definitely is.
prefer the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's
Hey, Ray,
so
I
we
read.
are slowly losing that vital experience. So a lot of folks who've been to Iraq and Afghanistan, Operation Inherent Resolve, they're slowly retiring. And then, it's funny, I went to a sister event, the combat support training range. A lot of
Mhm.
airmen that was there on these teams, none of them ever deployed.
Mhm.
Then your folks that have deployed, they're slowly transitioning out. So, I mean, to your point, Ray, you're right. I mean, we have the experience. The only thing that concerns me is a lot of folks who are going to go in harm's way. They don't have that experience like, some of us have.
Let me tell you about Wayne Fisk a little bit more, right?
Mhm.
When I came into the Air Force, it was the early 90s, and that was the post Cold War service, right? What were we doing at the time? The Gulf War just wrapped up, and that was basically a quick flash in the pan, right?
Mhm.
And then there were these peacekeeping operations and so on, right? So there was no fighting going on. And the majority of the people that did some of the serious fighting at the time were who? Vietnam vets. Where were
Mm.
they at that point? Retired.
Way out. Mhm.
Mhm.
What did we do? We started looking for them. It's like, hey, let me know, what is it like to be in a firefight? What is it like not being able to do enough to save somebody's life? What is it like to deal with somebody's death in the team where you have to take care of their families. So we started learning from them. They didn't have to be in uniform. They're still Americans and they're still here.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of, we're talking 20 years of experience of people that are around. For as long as I'm here, I'm willing to go ahead and impart that knowledge that I have into any young men and women that wants to know about what it's like to be out there. So we're never going to lose it. That intellectual property is always going to be here present with us. And people just got to know where to look for it. People just got to know that, hey, those gray beard guys, they still have a lot of value to bring forward, when it comes to this is what you can expect. And then there's going to come a time to where those young men and women eventually are going to be the gray bearded ones or the gray ponytail ones that are going to be able to tell somebody else, hey, this is how it was when we fought the Chinese. This is how it was when we fought the Russians. So it is a cycle. It's always been a generational commitment of the American warfighter to be able to set up the next generation up for success. And man, we have a lot of us now. So I'm confident that that is not going to be a factor when it comes to our young men and women being set up for success for the future.
Awesome.
Great point. Awesome.
Let me get to these rapid fire questions. So there'll just be a couple questions, well, a few that are just rapid fire. First thing that kind of comes to your mind. Some will be funny, some will be more or less thought provoking. So the first one, who was your childhood crush?
Oh, Linda Carter, Wonder Woman.
Really?
Wonder Woman. Cosign.
See, that was quick.
Cosign.
Yeah. Is there a person that you would trade places with?
My father.
Awesome. Why?
He's gone. He didn't have the opportunity to really prove his true worth to me. And I wish that I could just switch sides so that he can get to see what that worth was.
Biggest risk you ever took?
Ooh. On a mountain bike or in combat?
I guess either one.
Jumping 25-foot gaps and ended up in a hospital with a brain bleed and a concussion.
Okay. Okay. Best piece of advice you ever got?
Be a gentleman, be a warrior.
Worst piece of advice you ever got?
Don't be a gentleman, don't be a warrior.
And last, something you wish you were better at.
I wish I will be a better husband in the present. I'm always multitasking in my head. That's just the way that my brain is programmed. And sometimes I overlook things. And sometimes I'm not as attentive. Some of that is physical nature. Some of that is just the way that I've been my whole life. But sometimes I would like to be more in the present when it comes to my family.
I appreciate you asking those. Go ahead, Philly.
That's a good point. So usually we always give the guest the last word. Although I will say you had like 2 more questions pop up. I would like to get to those before we start closing. Go
ahead, man. We're good.
All right, good. So Bobby Keefe, he says, when speaking about experience, how can we as warfighters help empower our troops to practice mission command? America has been practicing the ability to embolden its junior level NCOs at the tactical level to make battlefield decisions as long as the initiative and creative plan aligns with CCIRs and ROEs. Other countries primarily need peer competitors do not practice mission command. How is this a huge benefit for America, and how can we train junior NCOs to know what they need to develop a battlefield?
So great question, Bobby. And, obviously, by the time I was all said and done with my 33 years of service, I engaged 89 different countries. 89. And out of those 89, I will dare say 99% of them didn't have an empowered NCO corps. And we're talking even some of our closest allies that you will think otherwise. But it all boiled down to the trust and empowerment that the United States system implemented years and years ago, specifically after the Korean War. That's when NCOs really, right at the tail end of Vietnam, it's really when we started empowering NCOs. That's when we created our senior NCO academies and other things in order to better educate our people to make decisions without the presence of an officer. Now, that played out over and over again over 20 years in combat, to where people made some critical decisions that ended up having positive outcomes. Sometimes not so much, but you win some, you lose some, right? A lot of officers in foreign militaries don't have that trust and confidence in their enlisted force. But it is an institutional failure in the sense to where they train their people, they do not educate them. And there's a clear, distinct difference in there. You train people to do something. You educate people to think through the problem. And that is something that we have been inching away of getting better and better and better when it comes to our NCO and Petty Officer Corps. Now, Mission Command, I will be careful using those words because that belongs to a commander. I've never been in Mission Command. I was delegated command authority in Iraq once because we didn't have a major, and I went as a chief to be the mission commander. But that was a rare thing for someone to do. I understood that the orders were going to flow from higher, and that we needed to make sure that they make sense and that they were executable, and that the people that were to execute those missions had everything they needed to make it work. And if they didn't, we had to make sure that we got them exactly what they needed. That logistical knowledge, that experience that we're giving people, and I've looked at the curriculum for our academies. And the last time I went to the Senior NCO Academy, I ended up going into a room to where the conversation was about fixing a problem set in Africa. And I almost shed a tear because I was just like, man, what I went through when I came through this place was bullshit. You were still teaching me how to write EPRs and counseling. Now you're actually getting into problem solving on a strategic level. That is great. So we have been walking on the right direction to make sure that our people are the thinking entities that we need to win tomorrow's wars. Now, our partners are seeing that and they want it, and we can help them to the greatest extent, but it's going to take time. Like I said, we started in the 1970s, so it's not going to happen overnight, and we still have a lot of work to do. But eventually we'll get to a place to where we will continue to be that example that others want to follow. And what that does is when we're working jointly out on the battlefield, on their unified commands, man, they always come to the United States of America as, what do you guys think about this? Why? Because you have the experience and you have the credibility, because you have the training, the education to make those things work. But I'm really proud of who we have, every single man and woman that we have in service right now, because they're basically build upon that mold of ass kicking that is actually going to take, the fight to the next level when we finally engage in combat.
All right. So we got another one from Brayson Robinson. It says, working for AFSOC was one of the most empowering periods of my career as an NCO due to the command's enlisted heritage and our connection to the mission. What can we do across the force to instill that kind of pride and appreciation for who we are and what we do, especially on the enlisted side?
So culture is based upon history. History is based upon the track record of the organization. And the track record is based upon the purpose of that organization. So you can never have two of the same, right? Even specific units in AFSOC, what do they go back to create that culture? Their history. The time that they kicked ass in combat, the time that they did this, we were dispatched because this is where we've been before. Not too many people are taking that approach to explaining to their troops why they're there and what have been the successes of that organization. What got them to be the Squadron of the Year at some point? What got them to get that Outstanding Unit Award? What was the specific time and place where they had the opportunity to shine and they did it to the best of their abilities? That's how you start fostering a culture that is, worthy of somebody's pride. People need to do that a little bit more often. And AFSOC as a whole, it's got a pretty good track record, right? And it was born from failure, and now they vow never to let that happen again. People need to dig into the history of where they came from in order to go ahead and get that cultural pride that is essential to make sure that people are motivated to report for duty every day. Not show up to
Mhm.
work, report for duty.
See, let me ask you something about the culture, because you have some people like I'm with the 56 fighter squad or fighter wing, and we have 56 security forces who was involved in the SS Maguez situation way back, and so we try to preach these things to our younger troops, but they're like, that was so long ago. They really either A, don't care, or B, it just doesn't resonate with them because of how long ago it was. They feel like if it's not on TikTok, if it's not on Instagram, if they can't, just get it across their feed, it's not important. If it's not a buzz, it's not important no more. So how do we get that across to them a little bit better about how important the culture history is of not only the unit they serving in, but the United States Air Force as a whole?
What is the best thing that you can do to change the habits of someone if they're being counterproductive?
Mm-hmm.
What do? Somebody is not having a desired method of doing something and you want to correct them. What do?
Either A, motivate them by whatever motivates them, paperwork or whatever, or just replace them with somebody who does care.
Okay, you got the answer right there, right? Somebody that doesn't care about the history of the USS Maya West, which, by the way, Wayne Fisk was a part of that mission.
Mhm.
That tells you something about the reason they're here. That's bound to happen again. The reason the USS Maya West got into that particular situation was because of piracy, which we have seen it, in Somalia here most recently. The reason they got into that is because of the unruly seas and the people that were willing to go ahead and hijack, and embark boats at the time. And it was because of an opportunity that that adversary saw to be able to get away with it. So forget about how long ago the USS Maya West took place, which I think it was 1975, 76. Think about the conditions that set up that catastrophe, that situation, because those conditions, I can guarantee you, are about to resurface again in the near future. And if you don't care about the actions that took place in 1970 something with the USS Maya West, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you're going to show up to the situation trying to figure out, like, man, this is a problem that I need to start. I need to have a cold start to solve this problem. And that is where most people get it wrong. I mentioned one of the first questions, stressful things about transition and everything else, planning. Anything in life
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't have planning becomes extremely stressful. Learning from history is planning.
Mm-hmm.
You're conditioning your mind to be able to analyze and compare what are the possibilities of success versus failure. What has changed since then? What technology do we have now that we can mitigate this? And what are the decisions being made outside of the Department of Defense that are going to impact this particular situation? So failure to learn from history is going to create tomorrow's greatest catastrophes.
Mm. Awesome. I appreciate that.
Good stuff. So I would say this, as we come to the end. First, I want to thank you for being here, Ray. As you can see from all the comments and the ones I got offline and the ones that will continue when we get offline, there are folks that adore you when you were in and out now. The highest respect we have for you and what you've done for all of us while you were in the Air Force and as the fourth SEAC as well. It's refreshing to see somebody at your level that's still connected to the military and can drop nuggets on us the way you've been doing for the past hour and a half, and even more importantly, to be so approachable, especially at your level. Because I mean, I'll just be honest, you're a badass, right? And so I remember my personal memory when I met you at Absent. I got a chance to take a picture with you. Initially, when I saw you, scared the shit out of me, man. I was like, that's
Dude,
DZ, man. I started seeing the
I'm
pictures of you.
5'8". I am
Right.
5'8", 160 pounds. You can take me right
Hey,
now.
hey, that's all cap. I saw you. I was like, and I saw you. I was like, all right, but I was like, you had the biggest smile on your face, so down to earth, and I tell you that That meant the world to me, man. Too often people take themselves too seriously. You're not one of them. And just the fact that you're on here, taking time out of your busy day, you could be doing anything, and you're with us talking to all these folks. So I just want to say I appreciate it. And if there's anything we can do from our platform, and
Absolutely.
please let us know. And like I said earlier, we love to get a guest the last word. And more importantly, we want to give you the last word. Tell us whatever you would like to tell us, something we can do for you, or any words of wisdom you want to leave for us.
To both of you, man, this has been a blast. And even before we started recording, we were just having a blast talking trash about sports and everything else. But you know, this is really what we get in the veteran community, right? And I always smile because, man, I got very little to frown about. I am an American. I was given the honor to serve in the armed forces. I was given some great opportunities to be able to go ahead and lead the best of the best. And that's the total force, not just in special operations. And at the end of the day, man, you feel like you contributed something worthy of society. Um, my wife and I both served, and we're extremely proud of being able, given the honor to wear the uniform. But man, now it's somebody else's time. And if we're not doing things like this, the biggest thank you that I can give to both of you is please keep these lines of communication open so that people can compare, the way that they need to either flex their focus towards something that is going to be more meaningful, or if they figure out it's like, I'm not really buying into that, get the hell out of the way and open up the door for somebody else to come in. you know
Mhm.
um Always remember, and this is a Herbert Spencer quote that I absolutely love, the true aim of an education is action, not knowledge. All right.
Mm.
You can be the biggest bookworm, you can have all the degrees in the world, but unless you go ahead and put it into action, it is worthless. It only benefits you. So make sure that for every ounce of education that you get, you take 20 actions to go ahead and help somebody else be better than who you are. And the last thing that I will say is that this is a lifelong commitment for me to be able to go ahead and set up the next generation up for success. So if anyone ever has any questions about anything, just please feel free to reach out, just like Philly did. It's like, hey man, we got this thing going, and we'd really like you to get your take on it. Man, that's what I'm here for. I mean, I love this country. I care about it. Memorize the oath of enlistment and dissect it, what it means to you. The most important promise that you will ever make. And at the end of the day, man, the reason I'm so relaxed right now and I'm still smiling is because I have confidence on every single one of you that when the flag goes up, because it's not if, it's when, you guys will rise up to the occasion just like we did when we had our time.
Mm. Awesome. Not surprised at all. Pete, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
No, I really appreciate it. And like Philly said, I mean, he took everything. We really appreciate you coming on. And everybody just, like you said, we talked about the beginning, knows the title now. They just call you SEAC now. Just like, they just call me Shirt now, and you kind of lose the name. So we appreciate you on here for being the name behind who the SEAC is and who you represent and who you are. So I really got to see exactly who you are, what makes you you, and what put you into the position of the SEAC. And I will always remember SEAC. Well, I'll tell you, I can remember the other 3 SEACs before you if they fell on me. I wouldn't know who they were, but I always know number 4 and now number 5 just because we saw them at AFSA. But really appreciate you being on here. Really appreciate the honesty. Really appreciate the impromptu way to answer questions. And sometimes it's not easy, but we appreciate you being the leader that you are and being on here. If you need anything for us, like Philly said, please let us know. Consider it done. Looking forward to part 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the books. Looking forward to the other books coming out in June and July. So looking forward to that. Damn sure make sure I get my copy, and hopefully we get to meet in person sometime in the future.
Yeah, we'll definitely meet in person, man. And for one last thing that I will say is, if you're not pretending to be something you're not, life is really easy. You will be
Oh,
very natural. You will not need a script. You will not need notes, man. You just speak from the heart because that is really who you are. So, man, be genuine and value yourself more than people give you credit for. Because at the end of the day, that's what makes you who you are, and that's what adds value to the mission. It is the thinking mindset of every single human that we have in our formation. So
Yeah, I need to get this book.
hey, Got my full notes. Got my full
I
page of
need to get this
notes. Good. Appreciate
Ray,
y'all.
at your leisure, when we end the show, there's a whole bunch of comments down there. We probably missed some. Feel free
Yeah.
at your leisure to go through, and if you like disrespect, they're
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, man, yeah, we'll definitely go ahead and if there's any other questions that the audience will like answer from there, then let's just go ahead and make sure that we do right by them.
Awesome.
All
I think we hit most of them, not all of them.
A lot of them are like accolades,
Yeah.
appreciation towards you, your flowers, giving you your flowers. So yeah.
Really appreciate you. Well, we'll go ahead and sign off. Enjoy y'all football Sunday, playoff Sunday. Come back and listen to the show 1, 2, 3, 4 times if you need to. Good luck to the Eagles for their first loss in and out of the playoffs. Wasn't too hard to get in, but it wasn't too hard to get out. Just a quick loss and they gone. So everybody send your condolences to Philly. Start them early. For the Eagles, go ahead and taking that L. And for the rest of the teams with the W, see y'all next week. Popular celebrities, we out. Peace.